Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update. Join the only official Telegram channel of RAU'S IAS Study Circle to get relevant material and important updates. Hello everyone and welcome to Daily News Simplified, your one-stop solution to detailed analysis of current affairs which are published in the Delhi edition of Hindu newspaper. Articles dated 31st of July 2021 are listed on your screen, and the time stamping for these articles is already given in the description box. So let us begin with the first article itself. This article was published on page 8 of Delhi edition Hindu newspaper, and actually it talks about an important editorial where we are dealing with the context of privileges which are given to parliamentarians as well as the member of Legislative Assembly. The context says that Supreme Court has ruled that legislative privileges cannot be extended to provide legal immunity to criminal acts committed by a lawmaker. Well, the privileges which are actually not well defined in the constitution, however, are given under various articles, are not codified. And because of this reason, they have been open to misuse on multiple grounds. And because of this misuse ability, lawmakers have now become a lawbreakers. And most of them have misused these privileges to such an extent that they have reduced the ethical credibility of the houses of the parliament as well as the state legislation. These privileges have been misused by many of the legislators to such an extent that they have been protected even by the penal laws, including your Indian Penal Code, on the name of breach of privileges. Hence, given the importance of this topic for your General Studies Paper 2 Mains examination and relevance of 2014's mains question, the privileges and power become an important topic not only from the perspective of the mains examination but also for the prelims as well. Hence, in this article and in this discussion, we will look into what are the parliamentary privileges, how they are defined, what are the constitutional aspects of these privileges, why they are not codified, and if we somehow codify these privileges, what will be the possible negative implications. And lastly, we will also look into the way forward which is required to go for better utilization of these privileges which are given in the Constitution. So let us begin with the first important topic, that what these privileges are all about. So before going into the discussion itself, let us see what UPSC has asked in 2014. UPSC has asked that powers, privileges and immunities of Parliament and its members as envisaged in Article 105 of the Constitution leaves room for large number of uncodified and unenumerated privileges, which actually have been misused, and is also the important discussion for this article. UPSC has also asked that we have to assess the reasons for the absence of legal codification of parliamentary privileges and how this problem could be resolved. So from this discussion today, we'll be able to answer all the aspects of this question as well as the questions which are surrounding the powers and privileges in the legislation. So before anything else, let us begin with understanding what these privileges are all about. Well, as per the Erskine May, parliamentary privileges is a sum of certain rights. Well, they are not absolute rights or the fundamental rights. However, they are enjoyed by each house collectively and even by their members individually, without which they could not discharge their functions and which exceed those possessed by other bodies and individuals. Some of the privileges rest solely on the law and custom of the Parliament, while the others have defined by the state. The problem in India is that the statutory provisions or the codification of the laws and parliamentary privileges are not available. And once statutory provisions is not available, they are open for gross misuse by the legislator. Now the problem is that these codes have been provided under different articles, however with open interpretation. Take the case of Article 105 and Article 194 of the Indian Constitution. Both these articles provide for special rights, immunities, exemptions enjoyed by the members of the two houses and in fact their committees. But these rights are also given to the individuals who speak out their mind and even participate in any committee of the Parliament, which also includes Attorney General of India and the Union Ministers. Given these provisions, these members enjoy unlimited powers when it comes to speaking out their mind. However, there are some implicit provisions given in the Constitution which imposes certain restrictions as well. The one important point which is to be noted here is that President does not enjoy these privileges despite being a part of the Indian Parliament. When it comes to the privileges which are available, they are of two categories. First one being your individual privileges and the other one being your collective privileges. Well, individual privileges, of course, by the name itself defines, is for the individual members of the House, while the collective privileges are for the Parliament as a whole with each of its House. When it comes to the individual privileges, it include freedom of speech, from arrest, exemption from attendance as juror and witnesses. When it comes to the collective one, it includes right to publish debates and proceedings of the houses, right to exclude strangers from the house proceedings, or even order sittings in camera. And lastly, it also includes right to punish a member or even the outsider for the breach of its privilege. The last point which we have just mentioned is the very important and most utilized privileges by the House as a whole. However, now the question arises that so why do we need these privileges for an individual person? Now, in order for a house to work in a proper manner without any unimpeded use of services of its member, now for an individual, these privileges are required to make them speak out of their mind without any fear of being restricted. On the other hand, a house requires these kind of privileges for the protection of its members and also its own authority and dignity. Imagine this situation. If a member of a house speak out something against the ruling party or the government, and government utilizes these privileges or maybe other constitutional provisions in order to expel that member, do we believe that from the next time the other members, especially the minority parties in the house, will speak out their mind? Well, definitely not. And in order to bring better democratic participation in the country and also increase the representation and the participation with healthy debates, privileges are required in the country like India, and they should be protected with the Constitution, which has already been done by Article 105 and 194. Now, if these members misuses these provisions, what we call it as? Well, we call it as breach of privileges. Breach of privileges is a violation of any of the privileges of members or even the House itself. Now, these are actually the actions which are casting reflection on member of parliament or even the houses itself. And they may include publishing of news items, editorials, any other statement made in the newspaper, magazine, TV interviews, or even the public speeches. So take this case. There is a member of parliament who has spoken that there is a breach of their privileges by, let's say, a particular newspaper in the country. And in that newspaper, there was an article which actually defamed this member for his freedom of speech. In that case, this member or the house can raise the breach of privileges and can utilize their power under this provisions. However, these privileges has actually been counterproductive on those cases where members were actually involved in illegal activities as ruled by the Supreme Court recently. Despite this, there are a number of provisions which are provided in the Constitution which have prevented or which have strengthened the privileges given under various articles. Under Article 361A, which was added with the 44th Constitutional Amendment, no civil or criminal proceeding in respect to any publication of true reports of any proceedings of either house of the parliament or in fact the assemblies, unless the publication is proved to have been made with malice. Now, this is not only for the members, but this is also for the newspapers, editorials, and any other entity. So, if a newspaper, let's say the Hindu newspaper itself, publishes a true report of the current ongoing parliamentary session, that newspaper cannot be called in order to breach the privileges of the house or the individual. But as per the Supreme Court, any house, let's say Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, could impose the prohibition on the publication of any debate proceedings, even if such proceeding amount to the violation of a fundamental right of speech and expression under Article 19(1)(a). What does that mean? Let's say a Hindu newspaper has published something and Lok Sabha says that the newspaper has breached the privilege of the house. In that case, the Hindu newspaper cannot approach the judiciary saying that it was only following its freedom of speech and expression. So, this statement by the Supreme Court has actually strengthened the privileges enjoyed by the houses to a many levels. Apart from this, Article 122(1) and 122(2) has provided further extension to these privileges, which says that validity of any proceeding in Parliament cannot be called in the question on the ground of alleged irregularity or procedure. Let's say the current monsoon session is in progress and there is a proceeding which is going on in the House, and if there is an irregularity in this proceeding, this act does not allow judiciary to interfere in those matters. Similarly, the officers of the Parliament who regulates its procedure and maintains order is not subject to the jurisdiction of any court while exercising those powers. So both these sub-articles have provided an immunity to Parliament and its officers in order to go for their regular proceedings without any interference of the judiciary. Similarly, Speaker cannot sue for damage of any action taken against the member, including that of arrest. So judiciary cannot come and question the Speaker in this regard also. And lastly, Supreme Court and High Court cannot issue any writ under Article 226 or Article 32 to restrain the functioning of the House or the legislation, even though the subject of a legislation is ultra-vires. As we have discussed previously, the court can interfere only when a bill becomes a law after the president's assent. Hence, after the passage of a law, the court can decide upon its constitutionality. Before that, it cannot interfere at all. So all these points actually strengthen the argument that privileges are important for a parliamentary democracy and they are extremely protected under the various constitutional measures and judiciary judgments. But because of these judgments, what we have observed in the past is that there have been a number of breaches of the parliamentary privileges. And as of now, these are the following measures which could be taken by the different entities. The first one is that person charged with the contempt or the breach of the parliamentary privileges can be summoned to present and answer the question related to the disobedience. So let's say there is some person who has spoken out something which is against the parliamentary privileges. Let's say he is the editorial of a particular newspaper. So this person can be summoned by the House in order to answer their questions. Even the House, let's say Lok Sabha, can order the person's custody in extreme cases. Similarly, we have Committee of Privileges, which can order for person record and also administer an oath or even the affirmation to witness before itself. If such orders are not obeyed, it will be considered as a breach of privilege of that House. So whenever a committee calls a person for such a record or administer an oath, that person must be present in front of the committee. Similarly, a House of a Parliament has a power to enforce discipline and even punish the offending or the obstructive behavior of a person, even suspend or expel a particular member from that House. However, this should be based on unfit behavior and misconduct of that particular parliamentarian or the legislator in that particular House. And lastly, we also have a precedence. Lok Sabha Speaker has suspended over 5 members in the past for their unruly behavior in the House. So all these provisions have actually provided a basis in order to enforce these privileges to provide dignity and sanctity of the legislation. Now, because of all these provisions and protection which is given in the Constitution and different orders of the Supreme Court, what we have observed is that the number of criminal cases have not been able to resolve in time-bound manner. Because of these privileges, it is hard for the investigating agencies to nab down the legislators or even conduct a transparent inquiry. every time there is a case against a legislator, there is also involvement of multiple agencies, including the parliamentary committees, of course, based on the constitutional provisions. And due to this, there is a particular demand about codification of these privileges, that how they should be defined, how they should be practiced, what should be the authority, how they should be brought into justice, and what should be the defined criteria of breach of privileges. Because of this, there have been a talk around the corner that there should be a separate legal provisions or a separate law that should cover all the aspect of privileges in the constitution. But there are certain limitations to this codification of parliamentary provision. The first one being that Parliament has yet not codified the privileges, which are actually available under Article 105(3) and Article 194(3). So, government should start from here. They should start utilizing these articles in order to codify it. The second one is misuse of privileges. Now, non-codification of these privileges has caused the misuse of certain privileges accorded to the member of the parliament and the state legislation. Privileges motions are misused in India to a gross level to fulfill the political ambition. For instance, the opposition party can utilize these privileges or their breach against any member of the ruling government. Hence, such action need to be avoided by the office bearer. Then we have the case that India has mostly followed the British conventions on privilege. And because of this, what we have seen since independence, that the jurisprudence on privileges has evolved and various important laws have shown the pathway. So what we have done is that government as of now has focused mostly on the conventions and judicial precedents rather than going for a codification of law. And the last one is that there is a need to streamline the parliamentary privileges. Now the point is that there is a need, but this need has not been supported by all the political parties in the parliament, irrespective of who is in the power. Because the lawmakers find this codification to be a hindrance in their freedom of speech and expression. And secondly, they also find it as a hindrance in their ability to nab down the autocratic rule of the ruling party. Because of these two reasons, most of the opposition members are against the codification of the privileges. But as of now, as a part of a parliamentary democracy, there is a need to stand by the freedom of speech and expression along with the criticism. So, the parliament should be bold enough in order to handle the criticism in the best possible manner and with open heart. The need of the hour is to codify parliamentary privileges. So we need a stringent codified privileges which should include powers and immunities of the House. It should also provide for proper guidelines to be followed and remove uncertainties which currently prevail in the democracy. An important case which is related to this topic is Searchlight case, in which Justice Subba Rao has strongly pleaded for codification of privileges instead of following the convention. So in this case, even the judiciary has called for the codification of this law. Now, with all this discussion, let us come to the main question. The powers and the privileges and immunities of Parliament and its members, as emphasized in Article 105 of the Constitution, leave room for a large number of uncodified and unenumerated privileges to continue. Now you know what are those uncodified and unenumerated privileges. Also, we have reason of absence of legal codification and how this problem can be resolved. The best way out is to provide a codified solution to these privileges. With this all in mind, let us go to the question which is attached to this article. So read the question carefully and answer in the comment box. Answer to these questions are also available on ELEARN platform of RAU'S IAS. Now let us move to the next article for the day. This article was published on page 11th of Delhi edition Hindu newspaper and talks about the recent move taken by the central government in order to bring a separate bill to amend the General Insurance Business Act in the parliament. Well, the context says that government has already introduced this on 30th of July 2021 in order to bring certain changes and also privatize the functioning of General Insurance Corporation in the country. When it comes to the relevance of this article, it is extremely relevant for your insurance related terms in the examination. It also talks about post independence financial initiatives and, of course, the trend in the insurance sector. As of now, it is also important for the relevance of insurance in the Indian economy, important issue of privatization with respect to your General Studies paper 3, and passage of a bill in the parliament. However, as this topic is mostly related to the economic aspect of our syllabus, we will focus ourselves toward General Studies paper 3 discussion. So let us see what this article has to offer. Going by the background of this article, well, general insurance is a non-life insurance. By this, we mean that all the products, including your automobiles, your house, your assets, your precious belongings, and any other physical things apart from a human being, comes under this general insurance. Well, this industry was actually nationalized in 1972, and because of this nationalization, there was a grouping and amalgamation of over 100 small companies into four major companies. And after this amalgamation, there was an incorporation of General Insurance Corporation in 1972. This kind of amalgamation and nationalization was also observed in the case of banking sector in 1969 and 1980s, and even in last 3-4 years we have also seen mergers and acquisitions of public sector banks in order to increase the efficiency and reduce the non-performing assets. These corporations were then became the subsidiaries of the GIC as a whole. GIC in the year 2000 was notified as Indian Reinsurer. Now, who is a reinsurer? Well, they actually provide the facilities which is similar to refinancing. So we have National Housing Bank who act as a refinancer for housing sector. Similarly, we have Exim Bank, Export and Import Bank of India, which also act as a refinancing for the export sector. Similarly, we have GIC, which is acting as a reinsurer for general insurance sector and companies in country. However, in the same year, the supervisory role which GIC was practicing over the four companies came to an end. And similarly, in 2006, Government of India became the real owner with majority of the stake in GIC. But in 2021, after the budget announcement of our Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, government is looking to increase the private participation in the General Insurance Corporation. If this come into the reality, the general insurance sector will have more public participation with more funding abilities in hand. Now, given this background, let us look into two important terms which are important from your prelims perspective. Insurance penetration. It is nothing but a measure of a percentage of insurance premium to GDP. Let's say there are 5 crore people in the country and they have collected over 1000 crore rupees of premium in 2021. Given this premium of 1000 crore, what we have in the denominator is India's GDP. And the result of this ratio would be your insurance penetration. When it comes to the insurance density, it is calculated as a ratio of premium to population. So India's population, let's say, assuming it to be 130 crore, and we have the same premium of 1000 crore. The resulted would be your insurance density. Both these terms are important from your prelims perspective. Now, let us see how this topic have been occurring in the prelims examination. Well, insurance as a sector has become very important from the prelims examination because this sector has been used by UPSC to frame various forms of questions in the past. In 2012, they've asked questions related to the employees' state insurance scheme. In 2011 also, they have asked questions related to the insurance facilities and other financial sectors of the economy. So, study and in-depth analysis of the insurance sector, especially the life and the non-life sector, is important for this examination. So let us see, why do we need a bill? The bill which government has rolled out in the Lok Sabha recently has the following benefits and will bring faster and efficient general insurance sector in the country. First of all, it will promote the faster economic growth because as we have higher ratio of insurance penetration and density, there will be a multiplier effect in the economy as far as GDP is concerned. It will also increase the penetration, which is dealing with your density. It will help in public-private participation, because see, what government as of now is thinking to bring more and more public investment in the general insurance sector, because general insurance sector is actually suffering from low penetration of funds. This bill will also help in common people's participation. How? Well, as of now, what government is thinking is to bring an IPO or initial public offering in your primary market. Government is not thinking for any strategic sale to the foreign partner. Through the IPO, they will attract people's fund in the general insurance sector, and these funds will be utilized for better efficiency and management accuracy in the general insurance sector. Similarly, it will also help in meeting the privatization target or the disinvestment target of the government, because it will remove the government's holding in this financial sector. See, what we are having right now is that government is holding more than 51% of the stock holding in the general insurance sector. Diluting this holding will bring more financing from the general public through the primary markets. And because of that, government could raise more funds for its privatization targets. Apart from this, it will also help in promoting the social protection, because insurance is part of your social security. Take this case. Let's say a person is holding a house. So this person has an asset in the form of this house, but because of an unseen flood, his house has been damaged. Now this person does not have a general insurance with respect to the housing sector. Flooding has caused the deterioration of his financial status, hence he is going through the financial insecurity. General insurance sector and its development will provide a social security to the masses of the country. Similarly, bringing private sector, private funds and more financial resources would provide designing the innovative products. As of now, the general insurance sector in the country is very limited to its product offering in the market. And lastly, it will generate the required resources, and resources here means your HR, that is human resource, your financial resource and your management resources. So given these benefits, let us also see what is the current status. India's current insurance penetration. Now what is penetration? Penetration is nothing but your premium to GDP ratio. So India's current insurance penetration is just 3.76%. So this is the current situation. Now you can easily calculate, given the kind of GDP we have, 3.76% is extremely low even in 2020. Similarly, the life insurance penetration is just 2.82%, and the non-life insurance penetration, which is also the general insurance, is at poor state of 0.94%. So this is the thing which we are talking about. Increasing the private participation in the general insurance sector will raise this 0.94% closer to 3% and even above. And that will definitely benefit all these sectors as a whole. With this discussion in place, let us now move to the next article for the day. This article was published on page 11th of Delhi edition Hindu newspaper and talks about the recent initiative taken by the BRICS nation in order to counter the terrorism in the member nations. So, when it comes to the importance, of course, this is important for my prelims as well as mains examination with respect to important national and international events, international organization and India's international relation. In the past, UPSC has asked questions on multiple fronts from BRICS nations. Let's say in 2015, they have asked regarding the Fortaleza Declaration, in which one of the options was BRICS. In 2014, they have clearly asked on the formation and evolution of BRICS as a group. So, given this thing, BRICS become an important topic for your prelims as well as mains examination. One more thing, whenever you read across the previous year question, always focus on the other options as well. So if they have given an option which is incorrect, although it is available in the question, you should have basic ideas. Secondly, it is not possible that UPSC will always give full forms or the complete terms in the option. So they can use this kind of framework as well in order to define their options. So you should be aware of that. Now let us see what we will discuss about this. We will go into the details of BRICS, why BRICS is relevant for India, why BRICS is relevant for the geopolitics, what are the current issues which BRICS as a group is facing. We will also go with the basic idea and evolution of the BRICS as a group, and of course discuss the possible way out in order to strengthen the BRICS as a whole. So let us start with the first one. What is the counter-terrorism action plan which was in the article? Well, it was finalized in the 6th meeting of BRICS Counter-Terrorism Working Group, and the outcome of this meeting was that they have finalized this action plan. This action plan has an objective to implement the counter-terrorism strategy, which actually was adopted by the BRICS leader in 2020, that is just last year. When it comes to the important summits of the BRICS, it follows the abbreviation itself. So if the first meeting was held in Brazil, the second would be held in Russia, then India, China, and of course the South Africa. So this is the correct order. After South Africa, the next meeting will be in Brazil. You should have this basic idea as well. Apart from the strategy itself, this action plan will focus on strengthening the result-oriented cooperation. Result-oriented cooperation here means that, let's say, if China and India are focusing on counter-terrorism measure, so what they have achieved in the 1 year will become a part of the discussion, and if there are any shortcomings, these 5 members would sit together to strengthen on that parameter. The important aspect of this plan would be preventing and combating the terrorism, border control, of course, in the case of India and China. So all other members do not have this border related issue as it is available between India and China. Although Russia and China share border with each other, they do not have that amount of dispute as we have between India and China. It will also focus on the radicalization. We have the case of radicalization in Jammu and Kashmir and of course Xinjiang region of China. It will also focus on the capacity building of the agencies, including your investigating forces. It will focus on financing the terrorism, in which RATS of Shanghai Cooperation Organization and Financial Action Task Force is important. It will also focus on information sharing among the 5 members, misuse of the internet by the terrorist, which is also now becoming an important agenda for the cyber terrorism across the globe. It will also focus on protecting the soft target. Soft target here simply means those nations which are poor, which have been going through the political stability, and which do not have better defense strength. Take the case of South Africa. So compared to Russia, India and China, South Africa is not as strong when it comes to the defense preparation. And lastly, it will focus on curbing the travel of the terrorist, because movement of the terrorist across the border can help in radicalization and misuse of the local innocent youth for terrorist attacks. So they will also focus on curbing these travel of terrorists. Given this discussion in place, let us look into the critical analysis of BRICS as a whole for India as well as the geopolitics. BRICS was first used as a term by Goldman Sachs in their Global Economics paper in 2001. This group is actually a group of emerging economies. So it is a major group of emerging economies. However, Russia is very well off when it comes to the human development and GDP. Despite that, Russia would be termed as an economic which is under the emerging trend. This group almost covers 43% of the world population, 30% of the GDP, and 17% of the world trade, with China holding the majority. This group was actually formalized in the first meeting of the BRIC, there is no S in this, in 2006. And the first summit was conducted in 2009. This group transformed from BRIC to BRICS with the inclusion of South Africa in 2010, and all these members of the group are also members of the G20 grouping. Given this information, now you will be in a position to solve this question on your right hand side. The objective for which this group was formed was multilateralism, rule of law, equitable international order, rule-based, transparent, non-discriminatory, open and inclusive multilateral trading. Given this basic information about the BRICS, now let us start. What are the basic benefits of BRICS to India and to the world order? Now, BRICS will provide a platform for proactive engagement with China and Russia at a single platform, apart from what we are having under RIC framework. This will also help in escaping the middle income trap, because these countries provide demand, demography, and of course multilateral cooperation. This country also provide anti-terrorism efforts, because see, India is a member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. India is also a very good strategic partner to Russia. India also hold an important place when it comes to the terrorist fight in South Asian region, especially with the case of Afghanistan. Similarly, this group also provide protection to the rights of developing country. Well, many of the members in the BRICS have been proactive when it comes to the climate change and trade talks under WTO. So a collaborative effort of this group definitely help India to raise its own voice. This also provide multi-sectoral cooperation under various sectors such as trade, defense, tourism, and expansion to international organizations including your UNSC. This also provides India a foothold in Latin America because here Brazil is involved and India is one of the nations who is looking for an strategic collaboration with nations like Venezuela, Chile, and of course your lithium triangle between Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. So, given all these things, of course, BRICS become an important aspect for India's foreign policy. Apart from this, BRICS is also important as a group for the world, for the global geopolitics. First of all, it provides a new development bank facility in which UPSC has already asked a question in the mains examination. So this funding actually has helped the least or the low developing countries for their financial needs. They have been proactive in multilateralism and global governance, especially in the case of trade talks. This group also helped in connecting the South-South cooperation as India is part of South Asia. There is Brazil in South America. Similarly, we have South Africa in African continent. The Contingency Reserve Agreement, also known as CRA, is parallel to your IMF, is acting as an alternative mode to IMF and is providing benefit to the balance of payment crisis in the member countries. And similarly, the rising of Africa and BRICS Plus collaboration can help the group in order to bring a stronghold with one of its members being the part of Africa to go for strategic collaboration, economic partnership, and meet its energy needs. And finally, this group will definitely promote the multilateralism, which is now becoming a more important aspect given the weakening of non-aligned movement and of course the United Nations organization. This multilateralism from BRICS perspective is also important because there is a rise of unilateralism given the bilateral issues and the contentious issues between China, United States, Russia, and of course Southeast Asian nations. So given all these benefits, there are certain concerns which are attached for India as a member of this group. The first one being that being a member of this group, India has to balance between Russia and China. Because what we are observing is that there is a rise of Chinese dominance not only in the Asia but in the geopolitics as well. And because of the Chinese influence in the group itself, what we are having is most of the members are becoming anti-US in their approach. And India cannot deal with that kind of approach because India is a member of Quad group, where India holds strategic partnership as well as a defense collaboration with Japan, Australia, and United States. Second concern is the conundrum between BRICS and Quad nation. So India becoming a member of a group in one side holding the multilateralism approach and peaceful collaboration is also holding a defense collaboration with developed nations for seeking its interest in Indo-Pacific region. So both these are standing in contrast to each other. Similarly, we have poor performance of New Development Banks. So New Development Bank and its lending is nowhere close to what AIIB, which is also a major initiative of China, is doing as of now. Similarly, the weak institutions and the poor governance of these nations are also becoming a major concern. The best example here would be the Contingency Reserve Arrangement, which is not putting its best performance out there in the financial global markets. We are far from achieving its initial goal of multilateralism, open trade, people-to-people connections, and confidence-building measures. The best example is being the import duties imposed by India on Chinese goods, for which we have obvious reason of protecting the Indian market from dumping of Chinese goods. Given those restrictions, the free trade between the BRICS nation is far from reality. And the last concern is the political ideology. Well, China is following the communist model. Russia, on the other hand, is a democracy with more autocratic rule. Indian democracy is the largest one, more open one. However, it is going through its own internal political crisis. Similarly, there is a situation in Brazil and in fact in South Africa where there was a sudden change in the regime because of the various corrupt allegations. So political ideologies and the status of these countries is also at the crossroad. And because of this political difference, a common consensus over a period is not getting into the reality. So now the question is, what should be done? What should be the possible way forward? The most important way forward in this regard should be that these nations should start with better economic participation, which can be extended to defense collaboration, and ultimately they should seek for socio-cultural and political engagements. With these three steps, this group can become more robust, more strong, and also become more in-depth in its approach for providing the multilateral regime which can benefit all the members as a whole. So, with all these discussion in mind, let us move towards the important question attached to this article. So, read this question carefully and answer in the comment box. With this, now we will move to the last article for the day. This article was published on page 16th of Delhi edition Hindu newspaper and talks about the importance of core industries in India's industrial production. Core industries are nothing but more strategic and more capital intensive industries which are required to boost the basic goods sector in the country. If core sector or the core industries are rising in a multiple manner, economy will go for the multiplier effect and there will be the expansion of the economy. The article has actually said that the 8 core industries have registered an 8.9% in the month of June 2021, in comparison to what it has observed previously, which was minus 12.4. Now, going by these figures, it can easily be seen that there is a robust growth in these core industries. But there is a word of caution. In spite of the lower production in this year, the index has shown the 8.9%. Now, how is this possible? And because of this, the industrial growth is yet to pick up its momentum. Now, the article is saying that there is a growth of 8.9%. This is a very good growth given the kind of situation which we are going through the pandemic. But this is not as good as it is required by the economy. Now, the question is why? The answer to this question lies in the base effect. Now, what is base effect? To understand the base effect, let us take an example. Let's say there is an industry A and there is an industry B. In 2020, the industry A registered a growth of 5% and industry B registered a growth of 10%. This year, that is 2021, industry A has registered a growth of, let's say, 7.5% and industry B has registered a growth of 12.5%. Now, from the absolute terms, it is easy to understand that both have increased by 2.5%. So in absolute numbers, we can say that there is no substantial change in both these industries. But when you compare both these data, you will find that industry A has registered a growth of 50% because 2.5 over 5 is 50%. And industry B has registered a growth of 25% only. Given this situation, we can easily understand that when the base of a particular data is small, now this is your base. When base is small, the result is higher, despite the same absolute change. And because of this, as there was a 12.4% negative growth in the core sector last year, 8.9% is not at all a surprise to the Indian economy, and yet we require a good momentum in the industrial growth. Given this understanding, let us see what these core sectors are. Well, these are your core sectors. They are 8 in number. They include your coal, crude oil, natural gas, refinery, steel, cement, fertilizer, and electricity. Now, why they are called as core? Now, take this example. Cement is a basic unit for infrastructure development and housing sector. If you are not counting the other traditional housing structures like use of wood. So, cement is a basic unit. If the cement sector is not registering good growth, economy will not grow at a higher percentage. These core industry actually contribute about 40.27% in the index of industrial production. It means the IIP, which also includes your power, manufacturing and other industries, have 40% of weightage of these core sectors. The Index of Core Industry is produced and compiled by the Office of Economic Advisor under Ministry of Commerce and Industry, and it is published on monthly basis with a base year of 2011 and 12. Well, these are mostly the factual basis for your prelim examination, including the weightage, where the highest goes to the petroleum refinery and the lowest weight goes to the fertilizer production. As you can see in the diagram itself, refinery holds around 28% of the weightage, while fertilizer sector holds just 2.6% of the weightage. It is to be noted that Index of Industrial Production, where 8 core industries also makes 40% of the contribution, is actually produced by a National Statistical Organization and not the Office of Economic Advisor. You should keep these pointers in mind while answering a question in the prelims examination. With this discussion in place, I will leave you for today's DNS with this question of the day. So read the question carefully and answer in the comment box. Answer to yesterday's question of the day was answer B. Thank you.